Hi, welcome to HerStory. On August 11th, Zambia will be going to vote in a referendum. To understand more about what we'll be voting for, we invited Vice President of LAS, Mwitwa, to join us in a conversation exclusively about the referendum.
This is her story. This is her story. This is her story. This is her story.
Hi, Eddie, and welcome to our show.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So, the first thing I guess we all need to understand is what exactly is a referendum? What does that mean?
Yeah, to put simply, this is just a vote on a question that's been put to the electorate on any particular issue. The August 11th question that the people are going to vote for or vote on is essentially to agree to the amendment of the Constitution by way of enhancing the Bill of Rights and repealing and replacing Article 79 of the Constitution.
Okay, that means a lot.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to do is let's break it down a little bit. So if we start with the Bill of Rights, we're talking about enhancing. So we already had the Bill of Rights.
Yes, we actually do have a Bill of Rights at the moment. Except if you look at it, this is a Bill of Rights that we've had from the time of independence in 1964. So it's 52 years old. It's never been amended. This is the first time in our history that it's being subjected to an amendment, the Bill of Rights in particular.
So this is huge.
It is huge. It is huge. And we don't know when that opportunity will come again. But the proposed Bill of Rights, the question that's going to referendum is, do you agree to enhancing it? And if you look at the proposed bill, it is certainly enhancing the rights in there, because currently all you have in the Bill of Rights are mainly civil and political rights. The entire Bill of Rights is about 14 articles, from 11 to about 27.
Wow.
But the new one is going to expand that particular part of the Constitution to about 44 or so articles. And there will be a deliberate separation of civil and political rights. And then you have an introduction of economic, social, cultural, and environmental rights. And then there's this portion that's talking about further and special rights. So economic, social, and cultural rights have never been in the Bill of Rights, and we've never had further special rights. So it is almost a new segment that's being added to the Bill of Rights. And the other thing to note, obviously, is that there are rights that are being enshrined also in relation to specific age groups. So you've got rights for children, rights for women, rights for youth, rights for even men. There's a portion that talks about paternity leave coming into
Very
play.
interesting.
Oh. Yeah, and you have rights for the disabled, rights for the elderly.
Citizens.
Yes, the senior citizens. So it's almost everybody is being catered for. The youths have not been left out as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
if we look specifically at women,
Yes.
what does the enhanced bill do for us?
It does a lot. First of all, there's a recognition of gender equality. There's a specific article that's dealing with gender equality. And that has also been broken down in terms of equality, in terms of ownership of property, equality in terms of opportunities, be it in employment, appointments, and then you have equality in a marriage. So the proposed bill is saying when you get into a marriage, you have the same rights as a man.
That's
In
what
marriage.
I want to know about. So,
Yeah.
Eddie, now, if this bill passes, we
Yeah.
understand that men and women will have 50% equality in a marriage.
That's right.
That includes things like property,
Yeah.
the children. Maybe you
Yeah.
can expand a little bit more for us about what the details of that are.
Yeah, in terms of property, currently what happens is the law is if you get married, there's a possibility that you can decide whilst in marriage that when you acquire certain property, it's yours. It's still subject to judicial interpretation, but what the proposed bill is saying is when you get into marriage, you have equal rights in relation to that property. And even when you're divorcing, you have equal rights. So a literal interpretation means you're going to have to cut everything right in the middle, 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah.
Is that good for women, maybe?
Well, I think it is, because it's going to revolutionize a lot of things, even in terms of customary practices, because in certain customs, either woman has got no say entirely in relation to what happens to the property if there is a divorce. Yeah, and you must remember that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any cultural practice that goes against the provision of the Constitution is said to be illegal to the extent of its inconsistency with
So
the
that's
Constitution.
50% of what you built together. So
Ideally.
it's not what I've come into the marriage with on my own.
Again, that is something that needs to be interpreted by the court, but I would agree with you, because that is currently what the law is. If you get into a marriage with two houses, but remember, you must also tell your spouse that these two houses I'm coming into the marriage with, these are mine. This is not matrimonial
So we have to put our
property.
names.
So-
This belongs to me.
Yes. The moment you tell your spouse that, you know, honey, I came with these two houses, but these are our houses, it means after the divorce, yes, he's going to make a claim to that property. But I think what this means is if you get into a marriage, you acquire two other houses or three, then you have to share equally when you do decide to divorce.
But there is a provision that's not good for women in that we're not being given the right to choose. Is that correct?
That's in relation
whether or not to have an
to
abortion or not?
that's in relation to the right to life, because currently, well, the proposed bill says life begins at conception.
Right.
So meaning whenever a child is conceived, we don't want to get into biology, but whenever there is conception, there is a life that's been recognized. And I mean, people are interpreting that to mean that you cannot terminate that pregnancy. And then there are no conditions that have been set in that article as to, do you have any excuse for terminating? The law is just one line. Life begins at conception. Yeah.
That provision has really put off quite a lot of women
Yeah.
against this Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
But Kathy and McGills and I were saying that that's just one provision that can be sorted out later. But
That's
in the
right.
meantime, we can go ahead and vote yes for this
For
referendum
it.
because there's so many other clauses that are good for women.
Yeah.
Correct?
Absolutely. I mean, when you go back to what's in it for women, there's also a right to choose a family name. So now you can decide after you get married, you know what, I still want to be called by my maiden name, but you can add the Mrs. in front of my
But
first name.
but is that not the law now? You don't
Well,
legally have to change your name now.
You don't legally have to, but remember that everything that's in the Bill of Rights is enshrined, it's protected. So there can be no law that can be enacted to change that provision.
Right.
This is a sacred portion of the Constitution.
Right.
Yeah, and then you also have, for unmarried women, if you so happen to have a child outside wedlock, the proposed bill is saying you have equal responsibilities. So the father to that child has got a responsibility to maintain or to provide for the child.
So this
You cannot run away as a
This
man.
is things like child support,
Absolutely.
That's really good.
at least financial support, maybe some kind of social, emotional support if
Yeah.
the father is around.
That's true.
So back to the right of life, because we talked about this earlier before we started taping, that in cases where a woman has been assaulted, where she has been raped, though there is no current provision that still says, well, if you've been raped, then you can terminate. But because there is the constitutional courts,
Yes.
there is something we can still do.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the other exciting part about these proposed amendments, because now there's a constitutional court that's been given the mandate to address or to attend to any questions pertaining to the Constitution. So there is an argument that in an event that a woman is raped and there is conception afterwards, can you go to the Constitutional Court and ask the court to make a determination that you have the right to terminate that particular pregnancy? Some school of thought is saying, yes, you can, because even though these rights are enshrined, there's also a portion which says you can derogate from these rights for the sake of public morality,
Right.
public order.
Right.
So an argument can be made that because the conception occurred from a situation that is not really in the interest of the public or within what is publicly considered moral, you can have a moral justification for terminating. That is jurisprudence that obviously will have to be developed by the Constitutional Court, and we hope that the court will be very progressive, because that court has been given the power to create law where there is no specific provision in the court by virtue of interpreting existing clauses in the Constitution. The bill also says that the government has to report. I mean, the president every year, when he's addressing the National Assembly, he has to give a report to the National Assembly as to what the government is doing to attain or to ensure that the citizens enjoy those economic and social rights. But in addition, there's a provision which gives you the right to take the government to court, the Constitutional Court, and say, I need a house or I need a road in my neighborhood. There's no road there, so you, the government, you need to explain why there's no road there, and you're building a facility somewhere which does not add any value to my attaining these rights. So the Constitution places an obligation for the government to now explain why, to be accountable, yes, why they're not using the resources available to provide for you, the citizens.
But we must make sure we take them to court.
Absolutely.
Or at least hold them accountable.
Absolutely. And for me, it's also exciting because it becomes an election issue when you do have a general election, because if you've had so many claims going to court, and this government is coming up and giving certain excuses for not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you must be alive to those facts when you go to vote, and remember that these are people that either are not just applying the resources properly, or they're just not telling you the truth, because their priorities are certainly not for bettering the lives of the citizens. Yeah.
So we could argue that KK International Airport does not necessarily need a huge renovation.
Yeah.
Especially when we don't have roads on
Especially if there are no roads, or the road even leading to the airport
Absolutely.
needs a makeover. So, I mean, you could go and argue and say,
Yeah.
look, we don't need this massive airport because there's only 5 airlines that fly into Zambia anyway.
Yeah,
but we could use that,
The
what is it,
resources for something more
millions of
Yeah.
dollars into
Yeah.
adequate housing.
Absolutely.
Sanitation,
education.
yeah.
You could use that money to build hospitals. Yeah, so that you can do. I mean, you will have the right to question how your resources are being
That's
spent.
amazing.
And that is
So-
us as individuals. We have that right.
And the beauty also is the proposed bill says if you notice that somebody's rights are being violated, the person themselves may not want to take that to court, but you can do that on their behalf.
That's great.
So
And say, I've
that-
seen children being abused.
Yes,
Yeah,
I was going to say about children.
Yeah.
Because right now, I think one of my biggest surprises, children seem to have no rights.
Yeah.
If a little girl or boy is raped by somebody in the household or someone in the community, everybody says, well, the mother didn't take them to the police.
Yeah.
And when does the child's right come into play? Because if I'm a mother and I'm afraid, or I even don't know what's happening, isn't there an obligation for that health worker who noticed and knows something is going on here, or that teacher who it's very clear that this child is being abused, to report this sort of thing to the authorities?
Yeah. I mean, that obligation doesn't exist in the law or even in the proposed Bill of Rights. But the clause I mentioned about somebody who's aware that that right is being violated or is being infringed, you've got the right to go to court and challenge or at least assert that right on behalf of the child that's being abused. But the beauty also is that the specific rights that are being guaranteed for children. So the Constitution now is adopting what is in the International Human Rights Conventions about the best interest of a child being the basis for doing everything when you're dealing with children.
Right.
Yeah, and then the Constitution is also guaranteeing free education for children. So there you don't even need another law to be enacted. Okay. So free primary education, free secondary school education.
Really?
Absolutely. And then the state is being given a further obligation to look after children with special needs and even the orphans. Yeah.
Do we have the capacity for this? This sounds really great.
Yeah.
But
is-
do we really have a social welfare system that can, forget even handling 100%, even 20%
Yeah.
that can handle abused children, the orphans, children with disabilities,
Disabilities, yeah.
and provide secondary school education for free.
You know, that's I mean, the politicians will probably tell you that we don't have the money to achieve all these things that the Constitution is placing an obligation on us. They will have a further excuse because the Constitution says, or at least the proposed bill is saying, these economic, social and cultural rights, they have to be realized progressively. So the good things will not happen immediately, but at least there's going to be a legal justification for the state or for the government to direct resources, national resources, towards realizing those benefits. And truth be told, it's better to have the law in place.
True.
Yeah, and then the obligation for the government to come and show how they are using the resources, available resources. That for me is also a progressive thing, and it will put politicians, on their toes.
Yeah.
That's right.
You have to be transparent.
Eddie, the new the amendments
Yeah.
seem very, very progressive. So why is there so much backlash against adopting this new Bill of Rights? Why
Yeah.
are there so many people saying no? We should not have. We shouldn't adopt this
vote
Bill
no.
of Rights. Yeah.
I mean, the arguments that we have heard are various. One of them is the assertion that there's been no consensus. I mean, it's like this is being thrown to the people. The people have not, the proposed bill has not been given to the people to read, to understand, and to adopt as their own. So the consensus building aspect is missing. And then secondly, the timing. Because we're going into a general election, people will be expected to vote for a presidential candidate, parliamentary, local government, and then you have mayors as well. So the referendum vote is like a fifth vote. So
Right.
it's very possible for people to be confused. And then it's also, there's a danger that you have this national event being politicized. So some are arguing that voters will be voting on party lines or affiliations. So
Right.
if I like the party in government, I'll go and vote yes. But
Right.
if I don't want that party to bounce back, I'll vote no for their presidential candidate and I'll vote no.
But it
For
has
the
nothing to do
referendum.
with that.
It's got nothing to do with it. I mean, I've been telling people, you can wake up on the 11th of August and decide, you know what, I'm just going to vote in the referendum.
Right.
I will not participate in the general election. And people must remember that this is a golden opportunity for us to have a document that at least takes us very far in terms of ensuring that our lives are enhanced and our rights are further guaranteed. And the threshold for achieving success in the referendum is very high. It's 50% of eligible voters,
So what's the number?
about 3.7. I mean, the Electoral Commission, using the statistics from the Central Statistics Office, they are projecting that there are currently 7.5 million eligible voters.
Okay.
So for the referendum to pass, you need half of that, which, if my mathematics is correct, is about 3,750,000.
It's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and
So
Eddie-
all of us need to do a lot of work. Yes, Tandy.
Sorry,
Yes, Tandy.
I just want you to explain to everybody that there's a difference between eligible voters and
Yes.
registered voters.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So in terms of eligible voters, the requirement is that you only have to have your national registration card. You don't need to be registered as a voter. And the further beauty is that you can register from any polling station. You don't have to belong to that particular
Do we still have to
locality.
register?
No.
No.
You just
You
show up on the
So as
day.
long
Just
as
show
I'm
up on the day.
18 and I've got my NRC.
Yes. So please keep
And I
your
don't have a fake
NRC properly. You can lose it after 11th August, but for now, you need to keep it. But for the general election, you need to be registered as a voter. So that's the second condition for you to participate in those elections. And the threshold is different. I mean, for the general election, you don't need a certain number to turn up. For the presidential election, you just need a winner to get at least 50% plus one of the voters that have turned up.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are voting yes or no for
Yes.
two questions, correct?
It's essentially two things in one question. Yeah.
Could you
so-
explain to us what the two things we're voting for are? Because a lot of people are confused as to exactly what that one question means.
Yeah. It's convoluted, but essentially you're being asked to say yes or no to enhancing the Bill of Rights. And then there's a segment dealing with Article 79 of the Constitution. So currently, as the Constitution stands, Article 79 is the portion that deals with how you amend the Bill of Rights and how you amend the same Article 79. So the Constitution says to amend the Bill of Rights, you need to go to a referendum and you need to get 50% of the eligible voters to vote yes to that amendment. So in this particular referendum question, the challenge is if you don't like the contents of the proposed Bill of Rights, but you're happy with the proposed new Article 79 in courts, you basically have no choice but to say either yes to the whole thing or say no even to what you're happy about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, just to be clear on Article 79, what we're also amending, because obviously 3.750 million people is a lot of people to go out.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never even with our own elections seen that number of people go out to vote. So one of the things that they're also talking about in the replacement is about changing who votes in the referendum.
That's right, yeah. So, and the new clauses that are supposed to provide for the way you amend the Bill of Rights and the same provision relating to how you go to a referendum, it's going to provide, if the referendum succeeds, that the threshold will be 50% of registered voters. So it will be a lower threshold, which will be easier for you to amend the Bill of Rights in future. The current threshold is way too high, and you need to do a lot of voter sensitization for you to get it. But the message we are sending as the Law Association of Zambia is that even if you don't understand what you're voting yes to, please go and vote. Trust us on this. We have read the thing, and we are convinced that it's a good thing. It is a good thing. It's going to make our government more accountable, transparent, and we're going to have better rights for everybody.
You didn't tell me about maternity leave.
Maternity leave is going to be guaranteed now in the Constitution.
But even for domestic, we were just chatting beforehand.
Yeah.
Even domestic.
The way the article is phrased, it would include domestic workers.
Because right now you technically don't have to pay your maid. You can take maternity leave, but you don't have to pay her unpaid.
There will be, I think there will be need to clarify, because that clause does not even tell you how many days or months you take for maternity leave or paternity leave. So there will be a law that will be enacted by Parliament to now set down the details or the specifics.
Are you saying that now paternity leave is now a constitutional right?
Once if we vote yes, and as men we are looking forward to that. It's time we get some rights.
You know
as
what
well.
I mean? You can also change some diapers and.
Okay, one
Absolutely.
of my big concerns I have, again, related to Article 79, because I think the Bill of Rights is very clear. Apart from my one issue with the right to life, but as we've said, it's better to pass it, and then later on we can start campaigning or against
go to
it.
court.
But for now, I think the Bill of Rights is very clear. I can't see why anyone would say no to it. But for Article 79, the other things that they're asking, we're replacing, would be other things that we need to go to the referendum for.
Yes. So in terms of the proposed bill, the specific clauses that will be entrenched, which will essentially require referendum to change, are things like the sovereignty of Zambia as a sovereign state, the appointment of ministers, because currently the Constitution says ministers must be appointed by the President from among members of Parliament, as well as provincial ministers. But if you vote yes to the referendum question, you're then saying, for you to change that clause, you have to go through a referendum.
Right.
There is no, and this is where the arguments for the no vote are coming in. There was no sensitization from the government as to why they thought that that is such an important thing to have as an entrenched provision. Because remember, for something to be entrenched, it means it's so sacred or it's so important that you cannot change it easily
Right.
as parliament.
Right.
Yeah. But surely is appointing a minister such an
Is that
important
sacred,
is it
right?
sacred?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. And then there's a confusion about how a certain article relating to family and marriage is also an entrenched provision.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think my last question maybe for you, if this is a yes,
Yeah.
all right, or a no, okay, well, more if it's a yes, when do all of these new great laws, except for the one we have an issue with, come into place?
Yes, so if the referendum succeeds, meaning the yes votes prevail or they're in the majority, when Parliament starts sitting, Parliament will have to go through the reading of the bill. Because remember, when Parliament dissolved, the bill had not been tabled in
Right.
Parliament. So the people will be the first to look at this bill, and then it goes to Parliament, passes the first, second, and third reading, and then eventually the President will have to assent to the bill to make it into law. And then that will be the end of the story. Then now the Constitution, as amended, will be complete. Yeah.
Wow.
So really, I think the argument for is that yes, you may have one or two provisions you're not happy with,
Yeah.
but the bigger picture is we've never had so many rights given to us
Yes.
in our
Absolutely.
history of Zambia.
Absolutely.
So it's better to go out and vote yes,
That
than-
is,
and then work on the ones that we're not happy with.
That's right. And what we are saying is this is really a golden opportunity for us to vote on making our Bill of Rights better.
Yeah.
Because if we lose it now, if we don't do the amendments now, there's no guarantee that we'll have this
It'll come back, yeah.
opportunity again. Because assuming the current government wins, I mean, and they come back to power, they'll have no incentive for offering you a chance to vote on this issue
Right.
again.
I
And
mean,
then
you
there's
did
an
say it's
element
taken
of cost.
52 years
Yeah.
so far.
And there's
I'm-
the element
Of course, I'm told
Yeah.
just to hold a referendum would cost us about 800 million kwacha. Yeah.
Which we don't
they're
have.
We
So
don't
they're
have that
saving
money.
that 800 million kwacha by asking us to vote the referendum
With the general election, that is the justification from government, because they're saying it's convenient now from a cost-saving basis or point of view. Yeah.
So I guess the important thing to remember is that it's not about which party you vote for. This is bigger
That's
than
right.
any political party. It's about you. It's about your children.
Yes.
It's about the future.
Generation.
To have the rights that we can enjoy in, comfort, freedom, all these.
Yeah.
That hopefully, when government has money to pay for all these things, that
They
we
would do
will
it.
get them.
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
arguing we don't have to.
Also,
do
it just
anything.
gives
And
the
it's up
basis.
to us
Yeah.
to make sure that government is accountable.
Yeah.
I want
That's
a hospital, so I'm going to say, you're obliged
Yeah.
to make sure that I have a
Yeah.
hospital in my area.
Absolutely.
It'll also make, I think, a lot of ministries and different departments have a basis of where to start from sometimes.
Yes.
Because a lot of them are just running from 1964
Yeah.
strategies and laws, and now it's like, okay,
There's
we have to do this
something.
because we are accountable, and
Yeah.
somebody's gonna come and say you didn't do it and you own
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
And remember, you're going to ask for my vote next time.
Yeah.
so-
true, very true.
Yes. My appeal to the Zambians and to all of us, we need to take this personal. We need to get ownership of this document. Let's forget about what was not done properly before we got to the stage where we got to see what we're voting on. Yeah, we need to sensitize our children, those who are eligible to vote. The church needs to come in. Everybody needs to campaign for this thing to work. Yeah.
Where can people get a hold of this document?
I know that the government has been trying to circulate the content of the proposed Bill of Rights in the public media. If you go to the Parliament website, to the government printers, I believe you can find a copy. Law Association of Zambia would be happy to provide copies for you. We are situated on Lagos Road, number 1 Lagos Road in Rhodes Park. The Electoral Commission of Zambia is also giving some documents like simplified versions of the document. Yeah.
So I guess at the end of the day, the most important thing to do is go out and vote in the referendum. The referendum cannot pass without half of the eligible voters going out to vote. Even if you're not going to vote for any of the political parties in the general election, the referendum is completely separate and should be treated that way. So we're urging you, yet again, to be an active citizen in your country and to take a real interest in what is going on to safeguard your rights and the rights of the people that you care about.
This is her story. This is her